People between the ages of 25 and 35 are more likely to vote conservative in Canada rather than liberals. They have the ideology of liberals, they have the ideology of liberalism in Canada. However, they are more likely to vote conservative only because of the issues such as housing and immigration. The youth in Canada wants housing and immigration to be dealt with. Canada will go into recession because of this tariff war. For starters, do not invite 1.3 million people into Canada in a single year. I blame, if the crime rate is going up, I blame the immigration 100%. Dubai, they don't even take immigration. Poland, they don't even take immigration. US is now controlling immigration. They are deporting everybody. Neither party has a very solid plan on really creating volume housing.
Mark Carney proposing replacing the consumer carbon tax.
I would much rather trust Pierre Poilievre with his plan when it comes to energy corridor. Do we not have a good striking deal with the US where they would not come out and again implement tariffs as well in the future? Trump lifted the reciprocal tariffs for other countries for 90 days. Canada still has their tariffs. Unemployment rate is going to shoot up in Canada. Canada will go into recession because of this tariff war. Hello everybody, welcome to Valuement. Today we are going to be discussing the elections in Canada, what is happening from Carney's Liberals all the way to Poilievre's Conservatives. We are going to be discussing on very specific topics, what is happening from taxes to housing, to affordability, to immigration, and then what's happening with tariffs. We will see how everything is affecting the small businesses and everyday hardworking citizens in Canada. Without wasting any more time, let's dive direct into this. Okay, so we are going to be discussing first for taxes. What is happening with taxes? You know, you already are paying so many taxes every single month, every single pay period whenever you're getting. If you own a small business, you already know you are paying way too much in taxes than you are earning. I believe the corporate tax rate right now is more than 30% for all the businesses who are earning more than 500,000 in annual business income. But let's kick this off with the policies that the leaders are proposing in this election campaign. Sunny, why don't you kick this off?
Yeah, a couple of policies. They have similar approach. They take into consumers relief that is coming after so long inflation that we have. The very first one that we come to see is Mark Carney from Liberal proposing a 1% reduction in the lower bracket, which is the 15% bracket, from the very first, after the 16,000 to up till $57,000 that we have the bracket. That one, the reduction in 1%, that's what we see from Mark Carney's approach. And from Pierre Poilievre, we see a 2.25% in the same bracket, the lower bracket. How much will that conclude to for an individual earning up to the highest from the lower bracket, earning the maximum, which is around $57,000, $58,000. That will come to be around $400 from Mark Carney's point of view, and from Pierre's point of view, that is coming around $900 roughly. The very second incentive in terms of tax cutting, in terms of GST, is in terms of the housing. With that being said, the first time home buyers will have a tax break, the GST break, up to $1 million of the house, from Liberal Party, from Mark Carney. And on the other side, we see Pierre Poilievre vouching out for up to $1.3 million of a house for all the home buyers that are included, so not just the first time home buyers. What do you think on that, Archit?
Yeah, so let's take this specific thing with specific thing. Let's just look at this thing for Sunny. Mark Carney is proposing a 1% reduction from the lowest tax bracket that you have to pay your income taxes. This is not for the small businesses or the business income. This is for the individual income that you are earning, that you're getting your CPP and EI deducted from paycheck to paycheck. Now, there is a minimum income where you don't have to pay. That is completely tax free, which is roughly about $16,000 or $17,000 in Canada. You don't pay any income tax up to 16 or 17,000 annual income. And then when you start earning more than $17,000 annual income, let's say 50, 60, 70, $80,000, that is when these tax brackets come into play and they are applied towards your income. So what that would mean, for example, if somebody is earning an annual salary, if your employer is giving an annual salary of $70,000, take out the first $16,000. That would leave you with almost $54,000. If you have $54,000, a 15% tax would be applied to your income tax. Now, what Mark Carney is proposing, that he is going to reduce that 15% to almost 14%. And when that 14% is applied, compared to what 15% would have been imposed, you are saving a single person, not a household income. A single person would be saving roughly $400 in annual taxes, versus what Pierre Poilievre is proposing, that he would take down to 12.75%, which would roughly equate to $900 per individual that he would be saving when compared to the 15% tax bracket imposed versus 12.75. And if you are just a husband wife, if you're just a couple living in a house, then that would be $1,800 under Pierre Poilievre's plan, and roughly $800 for the household income of two people under Mark Carney's plan. So those are some savings Canadians can see if either of the leader takes the victory come election day on April 28th. But before we continue, just a quick update for those of you who might not know this. Advance voting is going to begin on April 18th, this Friday. So make sure all of you guys go and make a vote if you're not able to go and vote on April 28th, which is the election day. But yeah, another thing, moving on. Like Sunny said, there is a GST and HST tax break as well. There are a couple things that what the leaders are proposing when it comes to GST and HST. When it comes to GST and HST, let's just say, if you are a person who owns a home, if you are a person that owns multiple homes, multiple properties, if you are a person who likes to invest properties, if you are a person who refinances his property, uses that money to buy the second property, refinances that again and wants to buy a third property, you know already that you can only claim one property as a primary investment and the other properties as investment properties. And when you claim other properties as investment property, you have to pay an HST amount to Canada. What either leaders are proposing is that if you are an investor under Pierre Poilievre, for the first $1.3 million of the value of the home, you won't have to pay the GST. Versus what Mark Carney is proposing, that if you are a first-time home buyer and you are buying a property up to $1 million, you won't have to pay the HST. Now, these two policies, while they sound very much alike, there is a huge difference. The difference being, if you are a seasoned investor and you are constantly investing into properties, you can save a lot of money under Pierre Poilievre's plan, because the more properties you buy, the more HST you'll have to pay under the current system. Under Pierre Poilievre's system, you would not have to do that. However, if you are not a first-time home buyer and you are buying a property more than, which is valued at more than 1.5, 1.2, $1.3 million, then certainly you'd have to pay the HST. It's only the first-time home buyer who would be relieved from that promise, that what Mark Carney is promising in his campaign for the policy. So there is a huge difference, and that will impact. What are your thoughts, Sunny?
Yeah, there's a few statistics why both the governments are focusing on housing affordability. The average home price, it rose from $400,000 in 2015 to around $700,000 in 2022. The average Toronto house sells for around about $1 million. This is a big leap in terms of the GTA housing affordability. Now, that is the reason why this cap at $1 million from Liberal, and why we see a $1.3 million from Pierre Poilievre. Other than that, it's a mix of emotions where the inflation has risen quite a bit in the last years as well. So that's the approach that they are taking to have a relief for the consumers, or for the first time home buyers, or the home buyers in general.
Moving on to the next topic, which would be housing. Let's say what's going on with housing. Let's see what either leaders are promising when it comes to housing. Now, housing is a key ballot issue. Housing is a key topic that every one of you out there is worried about. Even the person who owns 55 homes, even the person who owns 20 homes, even the person who owns 5 homes, or the person who is still leasing and still dreaming about buying the first home. I know it's pretty difficult for you out there to even think about buying a home. If you are 25 years old, if you're 27 years old, if you are between the age groups of 18 and 35, it is extremely hard for you right now to even think, even to even dream about buying the first home. Have you lately seen the prices of houses in the GTA? If you're living in Ontario, if you're living on this belt of GTA, Mississauga, Brampton, if you see the prices, even Niagara side, even Ottawa, the prices are crazy. Even just for a 1600 square feet home, just for a 3 bedroom, 2 washroom, semi detached townhome, you are paying more than $1 million, especially if you're living in GTA, in the Peel region, in the Greater Toronto area, in Mississauga, Brampton. You go to Toronto, you will find places costing more than $1 million just for 3 bedrooms. You go to Mississauga just for a simple bungalow that doesn't have a lot of space to live in, that will cost you more than $1 million. You go to some condominium apartments, and have you seen the sizes of these condominium apartments, by the way, these days? So cramped up, so small condominium apartment sizes. And how much are they selling for? Again, more than $700,000, more than $900,000. And the maintenance fees, oof, don't even talk about the maintenance fees. And you know what? I am even surprised. Why is it that these leaders have never come up with a policy regarding the maintenance fees? I own a condominium. I just recently received a notice from my management that they're apparently raising the management fees by almost $90 a month. Some condominiums raise it by 20, some by 50, and some are even raising by $200 every month. And these increases are happening annually. And how these condominium corporations are being operated, it is not a very complex thing. I understand if it's a little bit hard for you guys to understand how there's some of you who might not know how these corporations, condominium corporations, are increasing the management fees, but it is crazy the amount of extra fees that doesn't even make sense that they are paying to these third party suppliers, to third party contractors to maintain the condominium properties. But that's a topic for some other day. Let's focus on the key housing issue during this election campaign. What are your thoughts on housing in terms of what liberals and conservatives are promising in this campaign, Sunny?
There have been key highlights from Liberal that they are looking forward with, which is they're trying to establish Build Canada Homes, a crown corporation to oversee the affordable housing construction, allocating $25 billion to prefabricated housing and $10 billion for affordable home building. They're aiming to double the annual housing construction rate to nearly around 500,000 units a year. Um, on the other hand, from Pierre Poilievre, the approach is similar. However, there are some differences. Pierre is approaching from paying the municipalities half the cost for reducing development charges up to $25,000 to encourage home building, trying to push cities to lower new home construction taxes, aiming for reductions up to $50,000 with federal compensation covering half the loss. On one side we see a direct compensation, a direct subsidies to increase the houses. On the other side we see trying to cut the bureaucrats, or trying to align the municipalities, or trying to incentivize the municipalities in a way that they move forward to building more houses, or to be in that direction in general terms. What do you think?
So let me expand on this a little bit. Let me give some of the inside things that a lot of people might not know about how the housing really works. When the candidates say that they're going to reduce the development charges, or when the candidates say that they're going to fix the housing, it's not just say that they're going to bring the prices of housing down directly. They're going to impose, they're going to hold the hammer onto the builders' heads, and they're going to say, hey, bring the price down from $500 to $200,000. No, that's not how it works. When you are trying to build a house in Ontario or in Canada, the municipalities, they need funding to operate. Where will the municipalities get the money to operate? They will get the money to operate either from the province and either from the federal government. Two levels of government, provincial and federal. These are the two places they will get the funding from. And when they don't get enough funding from either provincial or the federal level, where would they get the funding to operate themselves? They will get funding by increasing your property taxes that they charge for your home. And they don't even get to keep all the property taxes. They have to divide the property taxes collected with the province and with the federal government. But property taxes is one thing, and the second way they get to get their funding from is through the development charges that they charge the builders. For example, if you are living in a city where the builder has announced that they are going to be bringing in high rises, or they're going to be bringing new construction of single family homes, detached homes, townhouses, or multifamily homes, or condominium corporations. When they build out these homes, the builders they need permits. They need to register themselves with the city. They need to tell the city, hey, we bought this land and this is what we are going to be bringing on this land. This is what our project is. This is what we're creating the housing for. This is who we're creating the housing for. Is it luxury condos? Is it affordable homes? And then they have to apply for permits, zoning bylaws, regulations, and then they have to pay the city for the development, which are known as development charges. What exactly are development charges? Development charges are the fees that the city charges to these builders to maintain the roads, to maintain the highways, to maintain the sewerage system under the housing, to maintain the sewerage system under the condominium building that you're living in, to maintain the lawns, to maintain the trees, to maintain the curbs, to maintain the walkways, to maintain the area where your housing is. Now, you'd like to live in a place which has nice, beautiful greenery, landscape, some beautiful trees maybe. The roads are clean. You don't have potholes on the roads. If there is snow, you want the snow to be cleared. You want the city to go ahead and contract and get the contractors, the snow removal contractors, to come out there and clean the snow for you. That is all through done with the money that they collect from either the development charges from the builders, or they get that done by the money that they get from provincial levels or federal governments. Now, the issue that the leaders are bringing in this campaign is that the municipalities, they are creating a lot of roadblocks for the builders when it comes to development charges. If I am a builder, if I am trying to build a condominium corporation, it's because of the city's regulations, zoning bylaws, and permit issues and development charges. Rather than getting all this done within a span of 6 months to 8 months, or a maximum up to a year, it is taking them almost 2 to 4 years. And for those of you who might not know how these projects are really funded, these condominium corporations, the builders or the developers for building these condominium corporations or these housing projects, they are not able to get the funding as you might be able to get the funding to buy your home, to buy your condo, from A lenders, from RBC, from BM, from the big six lenders, or from the B lenders. They have to go to specialized lenders, to mortgage investment corporations, to investment funds, to outside investment corporations to get the funding from. And these banking, financial lending institutions, they give them a blanket mortgage. Now, they don't give them a mortgage right away. They have to supplement the mortgage into certain phases. We will release certain amount of funding in a phase one. Then once that phase one is completed, then we will give you the next phase of funding, then the next phase, and then the next phase. However, every single time they get the funding, they have to pay an interest. They have to pay the interest rate, whatever the banking institution is charging them. And since they're getting such a huge volume of money from these institutions, the interest rates, of course, is going to be also huge. And to maintain their profits, since they are private developers. At the end of the day, they have to be profitable in order to in order to survive in the market and to deliver the projects that they're delivering. They want to save on the interest rates so that they don't have to pay a lot of interest rates by completing the project as soon as possible. And when the project gets delayed because a permit is not being supplemented by the city on time, because a zoning regulation is taking almost 7 months just for the city to be able to give to the developer, or for a permit to be issued by the city to the developer or to the builder, the builders cannot do anything. They cannot even start building. They can't even start constructing the project until that permit or zoning regulation has been passed and they have been issued the proper certification. And until then, what has to be done? The interest still has to be paid to the financial institution. And when the builder has to pay more to the financial institutions, or if the project costs more to the builder, what will the builder do? They will pass on the cost to the consumer. That is correct. They will pass on the cost to you. So if a condominium unit is being sold to you for $500,000, builder, a condominium corporation developer, or a housing developer can always reach out to you when you have paid 5%, 10% deposit, to ask you and pay another 10,000, 4,000, 5,000 extra, because apparently now it's costing the builder as well to construct, costing the builder extra to construct that project. So these are the development charges. These are the delays that the leaders in this campaign they are bringing up. And when we're talking about housing, there are two sets of plans that have been put forward by Carney's liberals and by Poilievre's conservatives. And like Sunny pointed out, what Carney's liberals are putting forward is that they are going to revive a plan that Canada adopted right after the World War II. Right after the World War II, there were soldiers who were returning back from the war. There were already existing population. What ended up happening? There was more people than the housing available. And as a result, Canada came up with a plan to increase the lending from the federal level directly to the builders to start building, to increase the housing start, to jumpstart the housing starts, to create more housing as soon as possible by reducing as much friction as possible. Then again in 2017, with the accelerator fund that Trudeau came out with, it's the same thing that he did. And now we are going into the same thing again with Carney, where he is introducing a plan where he is coming out with a brand new entity, with a brand new crown corporation called BCH, Build Canada Housing. And what Carney is planning is to lend out $25 billion. That's a lot of money. $25 billion to these developers and builders to take a loan from this fund and start building houses. And then under this plan, Carney would also use $1 billion to buy the equity in the corporations that the developers and builders will use, under which they will operate, they will make the project. So for example, if a developer comes out with a company name and he says, under this company name, under this banner, I'm going to create a 50-story condominium building, then he's going to be able to borrow the money from the $25 billion fund to support himself with a low interest rate, or with whatever policies that Carney is going to come out with. And he's going to begin with this project. And with that $1 billion fund, Carney would be able to buy a certain portion of equity in the builder or developers corporation, so that that builder does not go out of business, or government has an interest in that developers corporation, just so that the end consumer is also protected. Now, in comparison to this, what Pierre Poilievre is coming out with is he's going directly against the development charges. He's attacking the municipalities. What he's claiming is he's going to go against the municipalities by telling them that for every dollar you reduce, I'm going to match that dollar. If you are going to cut the development charges by $25,000, I will match that $25,000 with $12,500. 50% match he's going to do with that contribution. He is telling the municipalities that I will reward you for this. Not only the 12,500 would you be able to get back for the cut in development charges, the government, after he gets it passed by the parliament, if he becomes the leader, of course, then he would come up with other reward programs for the municipalities where they can get enough funding for the future. I'll give you an example. In the city of Guelph in Ontario, there was a, I may be wrong on the name, but Forum Asset Management Company who was coming out with a project to build housing for the students, in University of Guelph. What happened? The city of Guelph levied almost $15 million in development charges against the builder, against the asset management company. That would mean if a condominium that they must be coming out with had 300 units, and even if the city is charging 40, 45, $50,000 in development charges per unit, that is roughly 14 to $15 million that the city was charging the builder to pay out. And since the builder had other expenses to pay, for example, registration cost, interest rate costs, lending charges, construction cost, which is the major charge, plumbing charges, electrician charges in the condominium. You want electricity in your condominium, right? The asset management, the developer who was coming out with that project, he stopped that project. He stopped that project almost a couple of years ago, and that project is still halted. There is no progress in the project because the builder is refusing to go forward with it since there is the $15 million roadblock in front of it. So these are some of the examples how development charges affect, and we really need these development charges to come down for the barriers to be taken down. And in my opinion, I really believe that Pierre Poilievre's plan, when he's coming out and directly attacking the municipalities on these barriers, that is something we need right now. In terms of Carney's plan in coming out with a entity crown corporation, giving it out a fund of $25 billion, I think that is going to be similar to what we saw in Ontario by Doug Ford when it came to the Greenbelt issue. Now, for those of you who may not be aware what happened in the Greenbelt issue, Niagara area of Ontario has a portion of its area which is designated as Greenbelt, where you cannot construct because that area is designated as conservation. The land is not very solid. The land is not very versatile where you can create housing. And Doug Ford opened up that area for the builders to come in and to start constructing houses. Now, the plan that Doug Ford at that time in 2018 gave out to the population, to the citizens in Ontario, is that opening up the Greenbelt area to builders would be able to get more housing for the people in Ontario to occupy. Instead, what started happening is that very few selected builders were given the opportunity first to invest in those areas, where the Parliament budgetary officer of the province of Ontario came out and gave out a statement that the very narrow selection of builders were given a priority and they were making a profit of almost $8 billion. And similarly, in Carney's plan, that is a downfall that I see, where something like that could be repeated again, that out of the $25 billion fund, which if you really do a breakdown and calculation of, if that fund were to be distributed all over Canada in all 10 provinces, 100% that fund is not going to be enough. But I think key developers, key builders would be able to take more benefit, even especially large builders, versus the small builders who can come out with 10 houses at a time or 15 houses at a time. So, in my opinion, I think Pierre Poilievre's policy here with the municipalities is really able to help out with the buildings, with the housing a little bit more. What are your thoughts, Sunny?
Yeah, they are pushing the agenda towards making housing affordable for, especially for the newcomers. we see immigration has increased over the last few years as well. So there is a need for housing, and in order for them to be up to the point, we do need to build more houses. There's a recent polling that was done as well, which is according to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They're warning that we need extra 3.5 million homes by 2030. So that is why we see that number 3 million being advocated by the parties. So that is based on the data that was provided by CMHC to make the housing affordable.
3.5 million by 2030. That's what CMHC is proposing for the houses to be built, just to be able to match the current supply, the current immigration levels, by the way. And right now, Mark Carney, by the way, is just promising that he would increase the level of housing built in Canada by double than what Trudeau proposed, which is Trudeau proposed roughly about 250, 260 a year, and Carney is promising roughly about 500,000 new houses every year. We are in April 2025. Think about 2030. So 500, even if he does 500, that would be that would be still almost a million short of 3.5 before 2030 target. So I don't think it is a very realistic goal by CMHC that we would be able to create 3.5 million homes. Neither party has a very solid plan on really creating volume housing. I mean, for example, even Doug Ford was coming out with Greenbelt area. What about all the north of Ontario? What about Sudbury? What about Sault Ste. Marie? What about Thunder Bay? What about North Bay? What about Barrie? What about all these cities where you can create excess housing? But no, Doug Ford chose Niagara out of all these places to open the Greenbelt area and to start creating housing. So really, really confusing on how these builders really choose the cities, choose the places they want to create housing in. I mean, the other areas, the people who are living in northern Ontario, in northern provinces, in prairie provinces, in provinces where the population, have you seen the population in Nova Scotia? The complete population of Nova Scotia is less than the population of just a couple cities in Ontario. The whole population of the province is less than just a couple cities in Ontario. So why not proposing more houses in those provinces? Why not proposing more immigration in those provinces? But we'll talk about that when we get into the topic for immigration. Your thoughts, Sunny?
Yeah, moving on to the climate and energy sector. We see Mark Carney proposing replacing the consumer carbon tax, which they already did, and that was a big relief to a lot of consumers. They almost saw like a 15 to a 20 to a 30 cent decrease in their day-to-day fuel levels that we're doing. So they are proposing replacing the consumer carbon tax with a green incentive program to reward environmentally friendly choices. However, they would still maintain their taxes on large industrial emitters. They're going to implement a carbon border adjustment to tax high pollution imports as well. So that is where we see Mark Carney heading in terms of going green or trying to be more active in trying to reduce the carbon emissions. On the other hand, we see conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, advocating a contradictory view to what liberals are proposing. They are looking to eliminate the carbon tax on the industry as a whole. They are looking to repeal the Impact Assessment Act and Canadian Energy Regulator Act to fast track resource projects like pipelines and mining. They're looking to establish a national energy corridor to expedite key energy infrastructure projects. So, in the inter-provincial trades which we still have a lot of capacities in terms of supplying oil that we're doing to the US. However, that oil is getting rerouted through US coming back to Canada, where Canada is buying the oil. However, um, conservatives' plan is to prepare a pipeline that way they can serve out to the nation's demand as well. So that is a good incentive. That is a good plan out that they're coming up with. What do you think, Archit?
What is the size of population in the US? 350 million. What is the size of the population in Canada? It's about 10% of that. 40 million right now. If you were to tell me that you can build a national energy corridor within the country, you can build a pipeline from the source to different provinces, to different cities, to supplement energy within the country, to increase the sales, to increase the energy, more barrels of oil, more LNG supply within the country. It would make more sense in a country such as the US, which is a highly populated place. They can source it, they can fund it, they can really benefit it. If they were to do it within the country with a high volume of population, it really makes sense. When you have a low population in the low population countries such as Canada, agreed, Canada has a lot of mass land. Canada has a huge land. Canada has a lot of land available. You build pipelines, but what you have to keep in mind, the population is still 40 million. How much energy can you really trade between the provinces? What is the volume really you can achieve at the end of the day? How much would these projects cost? I mean, look at the example of the pipeline, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. $3.5 billion is what Justin Trudeau paid for that pipeline when he bought it from Kinder Morgan in the US company. And how much did that pipeline ended up costing us in 2024 at the completion? More than $30 billion. 3.5 billion is what he purchased for. $34 billion is what it ended up costing. How much would these pipelines cost us? Now, Pierre Poilievre is coming out and he's saying, I will speed up the approval process. And Mark Carney is coming out and he's promising the exact same thing, that he's going to increase the approval process and the environmental review for these pipelines to be passed. What people do not recognize is, at the end of the day, really, how much can you trade between the provinces? That's just my opinion on this. But again, when it comes to pipelines, when it comes to LNG, I think I would put a greater level of trust in Pierre Poilievre's policy. You have to see, if you own a business, you will look at your profitability. The only thing that matters to you as a business owner is the profitability. How much money are you able to take home after every day of hard working? If you are a person, if you are working at a job, if you are an employee, you will always see how many hours did you put in your job, how much money are you taking home at the end of the day. If you're running a country, you will see what resources are you able to produce more that you can export or you can trade, where you can get the maximum revenue out of it. Canada has a lot of energy resources. Trudeau promised that he would sell a lot of hydrogen to other countries when he pushed his more green climate agenda. Could not even sell 2% of his targeted agenda, that he would sell a lot of hydrogen to other countries, that he was prioritizing over the oil industries or LNG industries or the natural resources, the natural gas industries. Similar thing, I don't think Mark Carney, while campaigning, he might be all pro for coming out with faster approval processes and faster environmental reviews. He is still going to end up focusing more on green superpower, on creating a more green energy resource, a green energy superpower, a green energy industries, building out more green climate energy industries in Canada, rather than focusing on what Canada can really produce in a great volume and export something to other countries that other countries really, really want. For example, China right now, China is looking for more oil to buy. And where do they have to go to buy more oil? They have to go to Russia. A potential trade deal between the US and China right now, the trade war that China and US are having right now, can be ended today if they have a good, nice, juicy, beautiful, a really nice oil deal between the US and China. If Canada is able to produce more oil, natural gas, LNG resources, in my opinion, that should be produced more. The permit, the regulation process should really be reduced than what it is right now for these pipelines to be built out. And I think the barrels that we are transferring each day, each month, should be able to increase more so that we as a country can get more export revenue. And we can also leverage what we are best at to reduce the tariff and trade restrictions and trade frictions that we have with other countries, with other nations using this. So, in my opinion, I would just say that I would much rather trust Pierre Poilievre with his plan when it comes to energy corridor with natural energy resource, when it comes to climate and energy in Canada than Mark Carney. Plus, we already saw that Mark Carney was really the special convoy into the UN when he was the governor of Bank of England uh, for the green climate deal. What do you think, Sunny? What are your views on this?
Yeah. We see 2019, we saw a great focus on climate. About 500,000 Canadians joined a climate strike march in Montreal. That reflected great public pressure to go towards green policies. Now, what was the government's approach during that time? Trudeau launched the national carbon tax. And we see time and time liberals have advocated for that. Um, what do we see right now? We see Mark Carney also advocating for net zero carbon emissions and moving towards the green policies, moving towards the carbon neutral environments. So we do see that if liberals are placed in a position of power, they would naturally tend to be more towards the green initiatives, either being incentivizing the industries or I think being taxing the industries on top of their carbon emissions that they're doing. Um, the other side, we see conservatives. They are taking a complete opposite approach. They are not looking to do anything in terms of carbon emissions or anything in terms of that. They might have a plan in place for trying to be more environment friendly later in when they launch their policies and stuff like that, but I do not see that as being their main agenda in the policies right now. So that is where we see both the parties favor the climate and energy sectors. Let's talk about trade and tariffs in general. Some of the things that are being proposed by the liberal government are like maintaining tariffs on U.S. goods until reciprocal U.S. duties are lifted. Their proposes a new economic and security framework with the U.S. to address trade tensions and investing $5 billion in trade diversification corridor fund to build infrastructures that supports the trade with partners outside the US. On the other side, from peers, we see a proposal towards mutual removal of Canada US trade barriers, trade tariffs, and early negotiations of USMCA. They're looking to introduce a temporary loan programs for business directly affected by the US tariffs. Your thoughts on that, Archit?
My thoughts would be, why do we not have zero tariffs right now? We have a prime minister who has been a two-time governor of two different central banks. He should really be experienced. He should really know what he is doing. Why do we not have a negotiated tariff deal where we have to pay zero tariffs on all the important goods? Or the companies who are exporting their goods, why are they not able to send their goods to US where the US companies wouldn't have to pay any tariff on those? Why do we not have a good striking deal with the US where they would not come out and again implement tariffs on us in the future? Remember this, when NAFTA was being negotiated into CUSMA, there were no protections against Canada where US can come out in the future and impose tariffs again. The only reason Trump is imposing tariffs right now is because Trudeau and Trudeau's negotiating team never negotiated proper protections from the US and their tariffs against against Canada. So that is one major problem that we are seeing right now. Definitely 100%. Remember this, Sunny. Trump lifted the reciprocal tariffs for other countries for 90 days. Canada still has their tariffs. Canada still has to pay 25% tariff. Canadian companies are still suffering. Canadians are still having to pay import duties, import tariffs. We still have to pay 25% on all goods coming from the US. It's the Canadian companies who are taking the hit. And it is the Canadian citizens who are ultimately having to pay 3 times, 4 times, 5 times extra just because of really not making a lot of sense trade war between the US and Canada. And because of this, even there are some rumors for Honda to be taking their production from Canada into the US. Now, that is nothing more than a rumor. That is just a rumor because it was ultimately debunked that those claims were not true, that were originally reported by a Japanese media outlet. But 25% is a lot of levies that a person has to pay. I mean, take an example just this. Right now, United States imposed 245% tariffs on China. 245% tariffs on Chinese goods. For those of you do not know how much 245% really is, for example, in Canada, we have dollar store. We have some stores, we have some retail stores that are running on a principle of charging the consumers not more than $4 for whatever they're selling. And in US, they have similar stores like Dollar Tree or counter to Dollarama stores. And what those stores do, they order in bulk on shipping pallets goods from China and other countries that they are able to sell in the US to US citizens. Now imagine this. If you are a small business in US, if you have a small business that you own in the US, if you're a small business owner in the United States, and you order one shipping pallet worth of goods from China into the US. Let's say that shipping pallet, one skid, is roughly $200,000 US worth of value that you order from China into the US. The moment you go at the border and clear that shipping pallet, as a small business owner in US, you'd have to pay 245% tariff. Guess how much the $200,000 shipping pallet would cost you now? Almost $650,000. $200,000 shipping pallet will cost you $650,000 to get that pallet cleared from customs. And then it's just a customs clearance. Now you have to transport that shipping pallet from the customs, from the port of entry, all the way to where your store really is. And if you are in a state where you don't have any ports, guess what? You have 10%, 15% for just the transportation charges on top of the tariff that you have. And similar case in Canada. If you are a small business in Canada that orders, for example, most of the retail stores that sell a lot of furniture and electronics, those items are coming down south of the border, from US into Canada. And when these small businesses, they go to border to clear the items, they are going to have to pay 25% tariffs. And when they pay 25% tariffs or 50% tariffs, guess what? Not only are they paying to the US person the invoice of the product that they're buying, whether it be electronics, whether be it food, whether be it furniture, they have to pay 25% extra cost, extra taxes on top of that. And what will these places do ultimately? They are going to pass on the costs to the hard-working Canadians. It's the hard-working Canadians who are being crushed because of this stupid tariff trade war between US and Canada. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why do we have this trade war? Why Canada has to suffer? Why Canada has to be the brunt? Why Canada has to be on the receiving side of this trade war? And remember this: it's like an ant try to pick a fight with an elephant. Canada really cannot, in long term, Canada really cannot survive this tariff war. Remember this in 2018 when Trump imposed 15% tariffs on Canada. Auto plants, they shut down their plants, they shut down their assembly plants. Workers were out of their jobs. A person who owns a condominium in a city, let's just say he owns a two-bedroom, two-washroom that he purchased for $600,000. Seems like reasonable. Now he pays 20% down payment on that condominium, which would be roughly $120,000. That means he has mortgaged his condominium for $480,000. That means he has to work, he has to get an employable income, which he then has to use to pay down his mortgage every single month, then his maintenance, then his property taxes, then his utilities. Now, if you are a person who is working in a Stellantis auto plant, if you're on the assembly line, if you're working in a General Motors auto plant, and then your employer, General Motors or Stellantis or Honda or Toyota, they come out and they say, hey, because of the tariffs, we are going to cut our workforce by half. Just like Stellantis, they came out with their decision in Ingersoll in Ontario, where they said that they would be reopening in October with 50% of the workforce. Well, guess what? If you are a person who is laid off, how are you going to be able to pay the mortgage for the next month? Either you would have to dip into your savings or you would have to take more loan just to pay off your mortgage to be in good standing with the bank. During this campaign, why did any of the leaders not come out with a plan where they can force the banks, or where they can create a program for the people, or where they can create a program for the banks where the people who are laid off because of this silly tariff trade war to be able to defer or make late payments, or make payment plans for small amounts. Remember this, unemployment rate is going to go up in the coming months. Unemployment rate is going to shoot up in Canada. Canada will go into recession because of this tariff war. Even if Trump comes out and says next week he is going to remove all the tariffs, Canada for the next 3 to 4 months at the very minimum will go into a minor recession. That is 100%. The unemployment rate will 100% go up because US is claiming they have already collected billions of dollars in tariffs in just a few weeks since the tariffs have been imposed on Canada. This is going to be a massive hit on everyday hardworking Canadians and small business owners on whose backbone this country has been built. What are your thoughts on this, Sunny?
Yeah, thoughts are similar. I think conservatives' approach is leaning more towards reducing housing affordability, reducing inflation. They're actually striking the right points when they're approaching and when they're advocating for their policies. Moving on to the next one, we have immigration and the population growth. We see liberals, I would say, not taking a very hard take on the immigration. Liberals see it as we still have job vacancies opening up and boomers age group is retiring, so we do need to fill job vacancies, so they do not take immigration as a very hard take. However, that is impacting housing crisis as well. We need to keep that in mind. Couple of things to note is Canada in 2022 welcomed close to 440,000 permanent residents. This is the most that we ever saw in a single year. And their approach was to double the annual immigration targets in since 2015, which was to make aiming for around 500,000 PRs per year by 2025. Looks like they were heading towards it. However, the roadblocks that started to appear were housing crisis, inflation, and even at one point unemployment rising as well. There was a focus on immigration, but I would say there wasn't a lot of focus on niche specific immigration that was required when there were a lot of vacancies in medical staffing, a lot of trades that had a lot of issues with the employers to fulfill the roles. However, low skilled workers were still pouring into the country. What do you think, Arjit?
If I had a country of almost 400 million people and I were to tell you, Sunny, 800,000 people came in. Remember this, you have a country of 400 million or 380 million people living in the country, and I tell you 500 people, 500,000 people, or 800,000 people came into the country. Do you think that is a big enough impact, or do you think that is not a very huge impact?
Yeah, I see where you're heading with it.
Now,
This is
now compare this to almost 1.3 million people coming into a country which has a population of only 40 million. Now that number seems really huge. In 2023 and 2024, 1.3 million people came into Canada. They came into Canada either as students or temporary visas or refugees trying to get their permanent residentship status in Canada. And if you're getting new people, if you're getting high immigration in Canada, what is the quality of people? What is the credibility? How educated really are these people in Canada? I can bet you this, Sunny. Out of the 1.3 people that are coming into Canada, less than 2% are going to be able to create jobs for Canadians. Less than 2% of the 1.3 million people. The people who are coming into Canada, what kind of field of work are they going in? They are trying to become a waiter in a restaurant. They are trying to go into sanitation cleaning industry. They are trying to go into trucking industry. They're trying to become truck drivers. We see a lot of students who are coming into Canada working as a truck driver in Canada. These people, they're finding jobs in job agencies. They are finding jobs in warehouses, in industries, whatever position they're trying to apply for. They are working inside of Tim Hortons, a lot of these restaurants. What kind of culture are they really bringing in to this country? Recently, we saw a case of Paul Chung, where he was accused of helping out China. We have evidence where there has been some interference into elections in Canada by other countries, again, such as China or India for that matter. And then there are some MPPs and MPs in the parliament in Canada who want to serve China or India before they serve Canada. And why is that the case? That is because of high, uncontrolled, unvetted immigration. That is because the immigration system as a whole has been such horribly managed by the Trudeau government in the past 7, 8, 9 years that anybody from anywhere is able to come into the country without any repercussion, is able to do whatever he or she wants, and the whole country has to suffer. I blame, if the crime rate is going up, I blame the immigration 100%. The kind of the quality of people, the credibility of the people who are coming, the culture that they're bringing along with them into this country is completely unvetted. I don't think it's even 5% worth of what we are supposed to have in this country to be able for somebody to be able to create jobs, for somebody to be able to contribute to the society in Canada. We need more businesses in Canada at this point. And the way the immigration is being handled in Canada, I don't think that is just going to be a dream for a lot of people. Again, not achievable. One of the primary reasons the way housing is in Canada is only because of high immigration. There are more people in Canada than there is housing supply in Canada. And when you have more people in Canada, what are they going to do? They are going to do speculative investment. For those of you who do not know what speculative investment is, it's just like your neighbor investor who is buying 5 6 properties just thinking that he might be able to get in on some appreciation train and then sell his property and get his appreciation gain. And for all those uneducated investors who try to buy properties. They sell the house when the appreciation is high, and they run into issues such as paying high capital gain taxes. And then they complain that, oh, housing is too much expensive, taxes are too high. Well, taxes are too high, but anyway, again, they are paying too many taxes on capital when it comes to capital gains. And because of these people, Chrystia Freeland in the budget with Justin Trudeau came out, and they converted. They increased the inclusion rate from 50% to almost 66%, and then they changed the capital gain structure and how you would pay capital gains, where before the 50% of the profit that you would have from the selling the property, where you'd have to pay the capital gain tax on the 50% of the profit. If you were to sell the property in less than 12 months, the whole gain would be treated as a business income, where you would have to pay the capital gain tax on 100% of the gain if you were to sell the property in less than 12 months. And that is why Mark Carney, the first thing when he came into office after Justin Trudeau resigned, after he became the leader of the Liberals in federal level, he reversed the inclusion rate effect that was going to begin in 2026. These are very small things that end up costing big for you and for me and for everyday hardworking citizens. A person who has been working in a job for 15 years continuously is still not able to buy their first investment property in the province of Ontario. Buying a property is just like a far-fetched dream at this point. And again, I blame this on immigration. I think immigration can be really handled very well. And again, I truly trust Pierre Poilievre's policy on this. Again, if you see Mark Carney's policy on immigration, what really has he come out with the policy? All he said is that he is going to be capping the immigration levels that are coming into Canada, and then the temporary residents who are already in Canada, he is going to push for them to become permanent residents. He is going to push for them to have a permanent resident status. But again, what and how are they contributing to the society in Canada versus the proper merit system that we really want in Canada? During COVID, what was the biggest issue that we faced? The biggest issue was not the labor crisis. The biggest issue was the skilled labor crisis. One of the primary issues that the developers and builders are facing in Canada is that they don't have enough skilled labor. If there are quality issues in a real estate project, that is only because we don't have the labor. We have the labor, we don't have the skilled labor. Why is it that the US is getting investments for the chips? The US has all these companies who are able to produce chips, who are able to take the technology, the innovation, the businesses onto the next level, but we don't have anything similar, remotely similar to in Canada, because we just don't have skilled enough population. Why? Because all the population that Canada is interacting right now is completely clueless, has no merit, has no credibility, has no skills. We are just inviting anybody and everybody into Canada. Now, I am not saying that I'm against immigration in its entirety, but what I do want is to see a more controlled, managed system where we are vetting the people who are immigrating in Canada. For starters, do not invite 1.3 million people into Canada in a single year. I don't think we need more than 100,000 people, new people in Canada at this point, right now, until the current issues have been resolved, whether be it taxes, whether be it housing, whether be it climate, whether be it anything. We don't need labor right now. We need skilled labor right now who can produce more. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. Quality is something we really need right now in Canada to be able to compete at the same stage as China, as UK, as some of the Asian countries such as India, such as US. I mean, look at Tim Cook. When there was some interview that Tim Cook had, and he was asked a question if he would be able to bring the manufacturing jobs from China into the US, and he said it's not about the low wages labor. It's not about the price of the labor wage that you're paying in China to manufacture an iPhone. It's about the level of skill. It's not about how many people you have on a line who can really screw down a nail into an iPhone. It's about how many people you have down the line who have the proper technical skill, who have the know-how education on where exactly the screw has to go, and if there's any issue, how to fix that. In Canada, if we have three people who have the proper technical skills, China, India, US, these countries, they have 10 times, 20 times more people like those. China, they don't even take immigration. Dubai, they don't even take immigration. Poland, they don't even take immigration. US is now controlling immigration. They are deporting everybody. They have created literally an app to self deport for the people. Canada agreed, it has a lot of land mass available to the people, and compared to the land mass which is available in the country, we have only 40 million population. But if we control how we are vetting the immigration, how we are controlling the immigration, if we really manage the system on exactly who we let in the country, I think we can really make this country more stronger than our neighbors and competitors. What are your views on this, Sunny?
Yeah, immigration is straining the economy. We do see both Carney and Poilievre acknowledging immigration's role in fueling the labor force. With Canada's low birth rate and the retiring boomer population, there is a requirement to fulfill the job vacancies and innovation, which is being fulfilled by the immigration right now. We see Canada now regularly holds a high position in population growth in the G7 countries, with the population right now being around 2.7%, and 96% out of that being the immigration. So that's a big take on the immigration right now.
You know what? I really think this is the really nice focus that Canada can put right now. Rather than getting in new people coming into Canada, the country can really focus on childbirth. How many babies are being born in a year, in a day, in a month? I think they're supposed to be. Russia. Russia has so many soldiers who died in the war, and as a result, Russia is really incentivizing the small girls, the 17-year-old girls, the 18-year-old girls, the 16-year-old girls to have more babies, 16-year-old girls to have more babies, and then Russia, the government itself, would supplement these girls, these young ladies, with the financial help to support these babies. They want their more childbirth to take place in the country, and that is exactly what we want. I mean, if you see the more immigrants that are coming into Canada, they take a more liberal stand, but the children of all these immigrants, they take more conservative stand. There is a huge difference. The parents, they have more liberal stand, they have more liberal ideology. They look at the country as if Trudeau would look at the country. However, their own children, they look at the country from more conservative point of view. They know what is going on with the country, what is their future in the country. The parents bought the first house from the money they bought from back home, or from jobs. However, the children, as they move forward, the cost of housing is going up and up, and they see housing a far-fetched opportunity for them. And a fun fact, even Sunny, if I don't know if you know this, the 30-year-olds, the people in the age group of 25 to 35-year-old age groups in Canada right now, they are, and this is by the way, according to the Abacus poll. If you go on the Abacus website, you're going to be able to find this information. Apparently, according to the Abacus polling system, they found that people between the ages of 25 and 35 are more likely to vote conservative in Canada rather than liberals. They have the ideology of liberals, they have the ideology of liberalism in Canada. However, they are more likely to vote conservative only because of the issues such as housing and immigration. The youth in Canada wants housing and immigration to be dealt with. And these are some issues that I think that the candidates should really focus on during these campaigns. And let's see how everything turns out. What are your views, Sunny?
Yes. Immigration is a topic that is in minds of both the governments, and they have their takes on it. Where we see liberals being a more easy going with the immigration for now. They do not have a hard stance on it. Pierre Poilievre's approach to the immigration is more to so in regards to whatever we can house. So we see conservative focusing on more towards housing affordability or housing demand and pricing being the criteria to meet their immigration levels. On the other hand, we see liberals, they are basically working towards filling out the job vacancies and supporting the economic growth. Now, I do not know for a fact as to what their cap might be. From the previous government, we see that they were aiming to around 500,000 a year. So that's what we have right now with the immigration. Let's talk about media culture in terms from liberals and conservatives point of view. We see conservatives, they are vouching out to not have a government funded media outlet, which is the CBC. They're trying to cut all the funding to the outlet. However, on the liberal side, while already funding it, they more so are looking at around $150 million a year of a fund towards CBC or radio outlet as a national media outlet for the Canada. They're trying to put this funding structure in the law so that the parliament would have to pass legislation to change it. So we do see an approach being different from both the parties, where one party, which is liberal, advocating for having a media outlet, advocating for the government to the day-to-day consumers. I do see that that would improve in certain aspects to the consumers. That way, you would have more awareness in a society where you already have a government-backed funding, that the media is approaching the public, outletting their media stances to the public. The public is getting more acknowledgement or more news by that. On the other hand, we see conservatives trying to cut that funding so that there is less of a bias for one particular government, for one particular party. Um, Both the parties have their approach. What do you think, Archit?
$1.2 billion. $1.2 billion is what CBC, Canada Broadcasting Corporation, took from Canada under Trudeau. Why do we need to fund a media outlet in Canada? Why cannot we have independent media outlets in Canada? Why does the country need to fund its media outlets? There is a reason why most media outlets, news outlets we have in Canada, are left leaning because they are run and funded by the government of Canada. We need more independent media. Now, I will not claim that I am right wing or left wing. I consider more myself as a centrist, but in my opinion, I think Pierre Poilievre might be right on this issue. I think we need to cut the funding and we need to bail out, stop bailing out these media outlets. $1.2 billion is what CBC claimed. CBC got in funding from the government of Canada, and hundreds of millions of dollars is what CTV News, the media outlet CTV, got from Canada under the wage subsidy program. How many right-leaning media outlets can you really count in Canada versus the left-leaning? I believe almost 80% of all the outlets that we have are left-leaning versus just a 15-20% of them who are right-leaning. Why don't you guys mention in the comments who do you think gives you more accurate information in Canada? Which media outlet do you trust more? But again, in my opinion, the media outlets should be more independent in this country rather than being government supported and funded. Do you have any more thoughts to add on this, Honey?
We can look at some of the polls that we saw. There was a big poll reversal from January. We saw uh, Conservatives leading the command by around 24 points in January. And now in April, we have Liberals leading the charge. There is a big gap which they covered, which is a 30-point swing that they covered from the last few months. Liberals are still leading the charge right now as we speak by a couple of points. However, that point reduction from 3 weeks have been significant, from around 9-7 points now coming up to be around 3-4-5 points. So we see a big leaps from liberals from the last months, and we do see conservatives trying to close that gap as we are moving towards the election day. So which is a good and a key point that we see right now. Any more thoughts?
43%. 43% at a national level. Roughly 43% is what, at a national level, liberals are leading the conservatives. Conservatives are sitting somewhere between 37 and 38 percentage points right now at a national level in Canada, while liberals are leading at 43%. 6% percentage points is a difference. And the primary reason that occurred is because Pierre Poilievre's campaign before Mark Carney came on the federal stage as a prime minister, as an interim prime minister, his main campaign was targeted solely against Trudeau and the carbon tax, which Mark Carney, in less than a week, scraped both the carbon tax, and he even reversed the 66 inclusion rate on the capital tax that was supposed to be taking place in early 2026. Plus, again, there was a headline um, getting popular in Canada after the Carney Trump phone call, that where Trump mentioned that they had a really positive call, and because of that, Carney really had a 2 percentage point at right after that headline being released by the media, where he was leading by almost 2 percentage point the same day, ahead of the conservatives. Right now, there are a lot of policies in terms of not only on crime, but also on immigration, where the conservatives are falling a little bit short. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, and how Pierre Poilievre would be able to get them passed, not just in the parliament, but also where would he get really the funding from to impose those policies. Um, One of them really being the crime. Crime doesn't really make a lot of sense, where Pierre Poilievre is claiming that he is going to ban for repeat offenders from getting a bail. I mean, he's going to get a lot of pushback from the courts, because we follow a rule of law system in Canada, and if you ban bail, I mean, that is something which is going against a fundamental right, in my opinion. So he's really going to get a huge pushback from the courts of law in Canada. But we have yet to see how the elections on April 28th what direction they will go in. But anyways, that's about it for this podcast. Just to repeat a couple of points, advance voting is going to begin on April 18th, on this Friday. Make sure all of you go out there. For the people who are not going to be able to make it the elections on April 28th, watch out for the elections, how these turn out. These are going to be really interesting elections, in my opinion. Something really interesting is going to happen. I'm going to let them cook. Let's see how it turns out. Wish you a very best of luck to all the hardworking Canadians out there. Have a nice one, guys.